Now, I'd like to introduce our host, Heidi Dulebohn. Heidi is an international cultural coach and etiquette expert. She was the first female grain trader at ConAgra and the first woman to manage a major grain exporting facility in the US before she made a career shift. Heidi trained at the International Etiquette and Protocol Academy of London, England, among other places, and now coaches emerging and established professionals on etiquette, emotional intelligence, cultural competence, and other key soft skills that can elevate your personal and professional life. Now on to our panelists. Amanda Nguyen. Amanda Nguyen is a senior human resources professional who has spent over 10 years partnering with senior leaders in the hospitality and spirits industries to develop their people and processes to support corporate growth. As a champion of people and culture, Amanda has led companies to increase employee satisfaction scores and prestigious rankings on notable surveys like Great Places to Work. Amanda lives in sunny South Florida with her husband and their dog, Rocky. When she's not working, she enjoys tending to her garden and sipping on a Grey Goose Cosmo. Christie Heinz Fox. Christie Heinz Fox is the Vice President of Communication for Comcast's largest region in its Northeast Division. Christie joined Comcast in May 2017 to lead communications for the company's Xfinity mobile service following its launch in April 2017. She also led external communications for Comcast's video and entertainment business and oversaw the launch of multiple apps on Xfinity platforms, including Hulu, Peacock, and CBS All Access. Prior to Comcast, Christie spent close to 20 years on the agency side representing technology companies from startups through Fortune 500 companies. Most recently as the Senior VP and head of the technology practice for Edelman Chicago. She has a passion for leading teams and people management and enjoys mentoring young professionals. Christie lives in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania with her husband, 3 children, and a dog, Coda. And finally, Michelle Barge. Michelle is a strategic communications executive with a proven track record in PR, branding, internal and external communications, crisis communications, plus integrated marketing at the agency level. On the client side and independently in the hotel, travel, beauty and wellness, lifestyle, luxury, and fine art sectors. Michelle brings valuable experience from within the hotel industry that spans across marketing, operations, strategy, and communication. Michelle also has experience as a trained yoga instructor, which gives her a 360 view for wellness, hotel, and travel clients as consumers look more to personal transformation and deep connections in their travels and accommodations. Michelle started her career in Washington, D.C., where she worked for NGOs, local and grassroots politicals, as well as business and economic development in disenfranchised communities. She's fluent in French and Spanish and has strong working proficiency in Italian and Portuguese. I want to thank all of our panelists for spending time with us today. Thank you for being here. And on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Heidi so she can start today's discussion. I hope everyone enjoys and feel free to ping us your questions.
Thank you, Brittany, and thank you to all our attendees for tuning in today. You are in for a very special treat. And most of all, thank you so much to each of our panelists. They are all extremely accomplished, and trust me, they are each extremely interesting. You are going to get so much out of this today. It's been my great pleasure to get to know them, and this is just the beginning, I hope, of a great relationship. So we have several great questions today, so I won't take up much time except to say that if your organization, would you like to make it a little more profitable, more innovative, attractive to top talent, and you'd like to retain them? Well, here is a tip. Have more women at the top. And we are going to talk about this today. So let's just start off our first question with Michelle, please, if you'd be so kind. What are the biggest challenges facing women in business today?
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for the question. And it's a big one. And I tried to be very succinct and look at where the challenges have been in my own career. But I would say first and foremost, especially today, gender inequality and the pay gap. Corporations really need to look at paying across the board wages that are in par for both sexes. I think that is a number one step. I think as we have an HR professional on our panel, I don't know how that's done with clear transparency, but I think that women making 77 cents to a male's dollar does need to stop in the same role. And with that, I've tiered these, that then the next portion of that would be a challenge women might have is timidity in the workforce and not having negotiation skills. I think there's a book called The Art of Negotiation. Every woman should have on speed dial an accountant, a financial advisor, a lawyer, someone that's good at negotiation. But I can assure you, in all my years of working, a man does not think twice about going into his boss's office and asking him for beers and saying he needs a raise. I don't see the same thing amongst women. It's taken me many years to, as an independent consultant, be very, very strong and strict about my hourly and my fees. Before I used to kind of negotiate, well, now I don't, but it took years to have those boundaries. So the gender inequality, having stronger negotiation skills, which I think the lack of is a challenge. And then I think the third aspect of the challenge is the work-life balance. Unfortunately, home life still falls on the woman or whoever is the primary caretaker. But I'm saying this in a general context. But a friend of mine said, personalize it. I had a very sick parent when I was at the height of my corporate career. And basically, I had to just exhaust all of my leave to take care of my mother and support my sister versus being able to go to HR and say, I need 3 months off. I can't keep flying back and forth. I'm a senior vice president. I'm a money maker in the business, and I didn't have those skills. So those three things, making work-life balance a little bit more efficient for women. And then the other two that I mentioned are the challenges, but also what women need to focus on to get to the next level.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree. I remember very young in my career, I remember thinking I was making so much money, and I had a colleague, co-manager, same job of a very small little grain elevator on the Illinois River. And my colleague was a very gentrified, lovely, posh fellow from the coast of Southern California. And he looked out the window one day and said, I can't believe we're working in this place for X amount of dollars. And I almost fell out of my chair because I was making about half of that and was thrilled,
Right.
So, but luckily things are evolving and changing. And I had the guts to call the home office, and they just said, hey, he's a guy. He's a man.
Exactly.
Years ago, that they got away with that, but not anymore. So Amanda, you're our HR person. How do you handle it?
And I think, a lot of companies have made a lot of strides in terms of trying to adjust and address the pay gap. But I do agree with Michelle that, you have to have some sort of negotiating skills, or it's, thankfully where I'm at and in some of the, places that I've worked at, a lot of females do come back and counteroffer and, try their best to ask for more. And so I'm grateful to see that, but it's not always the case. So I think having those negotiating skills and just preparing for that, regardless of whatever the offer is, so that you can prepare to ask for what you're worth. And in addition to what Michelle said about the work-life balance, I think something that the pandemic has really thrown us for a loop is working from home, which makes that work-life balance even harder. So I do think that, another challenge in addition to working from home, balancing life is mental health. And I think that's something that's super important and challenging for women, especially today.
Oh, I completely concur. And that is a great segue into our next question. Christie, if you would kick us off, please. What myths about challenges women face in the workplace would you like to dispel?
So I think one big one that comes to me is just the perception that there's, women don't have strong networks. Um, one from the time I started in my career, I knew that I was going to have to kind of do it myself. So I was constantly, attending industry events, whether it was for my, in the PR world, or I quickly glommed onto technology, or if it was in the technology space. So I just kind of put myself out there, made sure that I was making introductions. I was very proactive about finding mentors and really kind of nurturing those relationships. So sure, there is, an old boys club. And I think in technology in particular, that continues to exist. However, there are opportunities to, to kind of find your way and to build your network. I think this event in itself is a good example of that, but there's lots of opportunities, out there for women to do that. So, don't feel, I would say, don't feel that the existence of any kind of boys network, and it's across many industries, should prevent you from advancing in your career. I'd say another one that, that I think of is a myth is the perception that, mothers can't get into leadership positions. I think it's less about being a mother. I think it's more about being a woman, to what Michelle has already said. So sure, many women take off time to, to have kids and come back. I think it's some of the women who maybe take too long to come back. That's a different issue. I think they sometimes get stuck. My sister's going through that right now. She's been out of the workforce for 8 years, coming back. It's harder. But I think the perception that, it's harder for a mom to get into a leadership position is not true. And again, it kind of goes back to what I said at the start around, just being proactive about your career, networking, and, taking the opportunities that are presented to you.
Well, and if anyone's looked at a day in the life of a mother, I think more in leadership should say, well, those folks know how to multitask. I mean, it is a very special skill set, and things get done because there is no choice. And I think that that does really need to be looked at as not just a soft skill, but an incredibly hard skill.
I just had a new hire tell me today, I look up to so-and-so because, they have a family, they're in this leadership position, and I never thought for myself that would be possible. But seeing this person in that position, having a family, making it all happen was really inspiring. And so I know that I can do everything in the future, which was really nice to hear.
That's beautiful.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Are you seeing people that are we're talking about working remotely? Is this going to help with the work-life balance?
Oh, is that to me?
Or just to any?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. I think some of it depends on, the ages of your family. I think it's harder for some women who have very young children. I think once we emerge from the pandemic and, daycares and everything is more open, then that will make that easier. But so maybe more short-term challenge there. But I do think that will be the case.
Well, and that's our next question. With so many women leaving their leadership roles during the pandemic, especially, what can companies do better to retain them? I'm hearing all kinds of statistics that are from bad to worse. How many women have actually left the workforce during the pandemic? Someone's got to run the household when everyone's there, and seems to fall on women. Why is that? And what can we do about it? Amanda, what are you seeing from an HR perspective?
Sure. I think the pandemic has encouraged us to realize that there has to be some understanding of that balance in home life and flexibility. So understanding that balancing life, school, family is much more challenging to Christie's point when you're at home for some people, especially people that don't have help, don't have family nearby. And so all the more reason I think companies need to be flexible with scheduling and hours and have more of a focus on outcome versus hours worked. And that's something that we've really found has been effective in hearing feedback from employees, especially considering timing of meetings and being mindful for mornings when parents have to get their kids onto Zoom classes, or maybe they have to do a pickup in the afternoon. So I think obviously it's not possible for a lot of industries, but as flexible as possible as you can be, and understanding that people have lives outside of work that are, I think the pandemic has forced us to realize what's most important to us. And for a lot of people, I think that's family and being together, and work takes sometimes a back seat if it can. And so, you know, aside from the impact of work from home in the pandemic, I think companies need to invest in development programs for leaders, female leaders, and you know, obviously have competitive benefits and policies and things in place like parental leaves, and help your teams understand and be aware of them so that they can use them. I think Michelle mentioned early on that, you know, a colleague of hers didn't know, you know, wasn't able to take anything or didn't have that opportunity or didn't know to ask HR. So making sure that those things that are available are you know, being shared with your employees so that they can take advantage of them.
Well, and I also see models in Europe that could be replicated here, and maybe they are, especially when office spaces, again, coming from New York, where these huge office complexes are now standing empty. I think that there's a great opportunity for some sort of hybrid daycare, where if you worked part-time for several hours, there would be a qualified and professional daycare staff for all ages that could watch your children, institute home schooling, or if we have to, go back to Zoom classes for children, that these could be done in these ginormous office spaces that are virtually empty, and giving parents an option to work, or parents, just anyone, honestly, to work several days in the office. Because one thing we are seeing is that, especially again, the New York perspective, many people in New York, even the very wealthy, are not living in environments with, you know, 7,000 square feet and backyards and cabanas and all that, that even the most affluent are still living in what would be considered tighter spaces. So some people want to go back into the office, but they still want the flexibility to work from home. So I think a combination of making it attractive for parents to either have a place in their office where children could be and still learn. Also, coming out of hospitality, there could be a food organization that comes in and has food prepared for the workers, things that they could take back home so they don't have to worry about cooking. There are so many ideas. I look at the great Jose Andres, even though he does World Kitchen for famine relief in hard hit places. Well, guess what? Corona was hard hit. You could bring in food to workers. Mom, dads don't have to worry about that, but make it a more hybrid work-life situation.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm such a fan of his. What great work.
You know, I had to bring up something food related. He's my hero.
I so admire him and how he's handled through, you know, the pandemic. I bet he retains his top people for sure, you know.
Yes, he does.
And Christie, are you seeing how are you retaining your talent at your company?
Yeah, I think one thing that Amanda hit on that I couldn't agree more with is the leadership development. I think just ensuring you have the programs in place, you know, to make sure that employees realize the opportunities they do have, whether it's staying in their function, looking outside of that, and just getting the exposure that they need to build their brand, to hone their speaking skills, all of that. so that, they can continue, to advance. And I think, couldn't agree more on flexibility. I think a lot of it is, walking the talk, like making sure, I'm grateful to work for a company where, we have the flexibility, we have great benefits, and I think it's just really important for companies to not only, say they're going to do things, but to actually do it. So that would be my thought on that.
Well, I think those are great points, great tips for everyone. And, in the research, it's just, without question, people are more in certain positions, certain jobs are more productive at home. So why not give this flexibility and retain people and treat them fairly and develop them, bring them on, develop them, and keep encouraging them. So this is perfect for our next question, which is, how can women use their ability to bring empathy and kindness to the workplace as an advantage instead of being seen as a weakness? Anyone want to jump in on that? Christie, you're kind of.
I'll take that one. Because I have such a salient example that always comes up, and not to cut you off, Christie.
No.
I've always learned that treating people with kindness just gets you better results. I've never seen it as something that would be not an attribute. And I had a young assistant at the agency who was lovely, very devoted. We're still very good friends. And we had a huge client meeting, and the girl was ill, clearly not well. And I could see her struggling, and she was very sick. So I told her to go back to her cubicle, and I'd get her a cab home or whatever. And I started to get the AV equipment together and setting up and Xeroxing things. And my managing partner, mind you, I'm a VP at this time, my managing partner came in and he was like, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "Well, my assistant's very ill." He's like, "Well, she needs to get her butt in here." I go, "So we're gonna risk a young lady getting ill at a meeting versus us just all jumping in as a team?" And that act to her was invaluable. And this young lady worked her tail off for me from there on out. She already was. But this sense of that as a company, we can't all jump in. If we see a crisis, we can't all help out. The bottom line is winning the client, not the pecking order of who put the AV equipment up. So I was just glad I knew how to work the AV equipment, honestly. But that to me is an act of kindness, that I'm a maternal manager, but I don't think that's a bad thing, because people need kindness when you're working together 9-10 hours a day.
I absolutely concur. Christie, Amanda, what?
Yeah, I'll just jump in. Something that Michelle said, I think by being kind and having, taking an empathetic approach, I think you get employees to open up more. I'll use an example of, I've managed a lot of men and women. I love to mentor young professionals, and I think I've always just taken that approach. And every call that I get from somebody who graduates from my alma mater, Wake Forest University, I'll take them all and I'll talk to them, and, however I can help them. Some I've helped, in more specifically land in certain places, and some not. But I had, recently I had a colleague call me kind of out of the blue who was on my team years ago. At the agency, and we'd kind of kept in touch. He had moved to the West Coast during the pandemic, was thinking about moving back, wasn't sure what to do, but reached out to me, and he just needed advice and guidance. And it was one of those reminders to me of how important it is just to take the time to to nurture young people, but to be the kind of manager that they'll come to down the road, kind of back to like building those, mentoring relationships over time. So I think that's just something that women inherently bring to work.
And if I can just add, I think, in hotels, we teach a lot about empathizing with our customers and with the guests. And I think a lot of industries do that. And I think, to me, empathizing is being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, so you can better understand them. So I think no matter what role and no matter what industry, I think being able to understand your clients, your customers, your coworkers, your direct reports, the better that you understand your business and your people, the better you are going to be in whatever job that you're in.
Absolutely. It's really, everything I do revolves around etiquette, which is a really big word, a lot more than knives and forks. And it just boils down into, kindness. I say, be kind. It's free. It doesn't cost you any money. Michelle jumped in helping this person who is so sick. I mean, that's just a kind human being. Why, and when people don't think like that, to me, it's so, it's hard to even understand that. Just be kind, be empathetic, especially during this pandemic. I hope all the leaders are a little more empathetic. My gosh, we've been in everybody's own living room or their closet or from wherever, the curtain's been pulled back on this whole thing. And maybe you do understand a little bit more. Do walk in their shoes a little bit more and see some situations and, okay, well, why maybe they need a little extra time or what, so you still have to be objective and get the job done, but we can maybe be a little more empathetic and kind along the way. Well, let's just sort of jump down. When Christie brought up mentorships, we'll come back to a question we have here, but let's just talk about that for a moment, because I'm glad you brought that up. How important are mentorships and sponsorship programs for women? And Michelle, would you please give us your thoughts?
Yes, this is a topic that's near and dear to me. I think that we've talked about this as a group, but I do make a distinction between mentorship and sponsorship. I feel that mentorship is something that we all, at least on this group, do all the time. I have a dear friend who might be listening who gave me some suggestions because I'm in this temporary housing situation on setting up my Zoom. To me, that's a mentorship. She did it out of the graciousness of her heart. She wants me to succeed. She wants to share her tips, etc. And you can find that in a work environment. And also it segues into the buddy system that I find in some corporate environments. Kind of two thoughts there. If the buddy system is a match where one individual really has connective points with that person, like they went to the same school, they like the same activities, they might have the same or similar socioeconomic background, but just sticking, Bobby from accounting with a new hire in design, that can go either way. And then sponsorship, to me, which I've done more of, is really looking at someone from the inception of their career and seeing it through, and then advocating for their successes. So if you're sitting in a board meeting and someone says, hey, we need a new hire here, it's like, well, you need to look at my person because I'm trying to get them to the next level of their career. So whatever way you want to phrase it, be it the mentorship, the buddy system, or a sponsorship, the collective is that it has to be proactive and it has to be of benefit to the person who is getting the mentoring. We had said it needs to be two-way. The two-way is that if you're going to sponsor someone, they're going to show up. If you say meet Bob at the club at 3, they're going to show up. That's really the only give and take for me. But I think that especially with people of color, and especially women, young women of color, who might be the first generation to either go through university or get some sort of job outside of their family structure, meaning what they saw, it's incredibly important to guide them, but in a way that feels organic and empowering.
Very, very well put. I completely agree. Christie, would you like to say a little bit more about your mentorship?
Yeah, I guess I would just add that, you know, mentorship, I think it's just so critical. If I look back on my career, I've had, I'd say it's probably been more informal mentoring than it has been a formal program. And it's also been a mix of women and men mentors. And I think that's also been very beneficial to me, again, getting different perspectives. But those individuals, you know, have helped me so much just from, and it's outside of work too, which I think was a good point that Michelle made. It's not only in like that one area. You know, I wouldn't be where I am today without those individuals. And so a big thing that I just try to do is to pay that forward, which is why I do take every single call that I get from a student in particular, you know, to try to do the same.
It's wonderful. Amanda?
I agree with both Michelle and Christie. I think, you know, if you don't have an opportunity within the company that you work at, I think it's important to take initiative and seek out a mentor, whether that's attending a professional gathering or organization, signing up for an organization. So I think that, you know, looking at your alma mater or other local programs, groups, you can find a lot of different people out there that are willing to offer advice and a different perspective. I think that's really important because even if you do have a mentor in your own company today, I think it's also important to have somebody externally to bounce ideas off of, you know, get advice on how to ask for higher compensation, or should I go for that job, or what do I do with this difficult work situation? So I think it's really important to have people that you can lean into for advice.
I agree.
And I also want to state too, just quickly, that these mentors to me, now that I look back on my career, to what Amanda is saying, haven't necessarily been work related. So we go back to the first topic, say you really feel you need help with negotiation. I'd go on to the, you know, CPAs of America and see who's doing pro bono work and say, hey, can you talk to me for an hour about QuickBooks and negotiation? That's that kind of creative stepping out, especially when we are in this remote world that we're in now and we don't have these traditional structures. I think people need to be very creative and look at adjunct mentorship when it comes to where they feel they're lacking in their career or need, you know, an extra boost.
I think that's a great point. And be bold, you know, go out there, seek them. You know, don't wait. Don't be, you know, we're talking about being timid earlier. Don't be timid. Be, you know, be
Right.
bold, stand up for yourself and find people that will help you, because I shared with the panelists earlier, and I'll share with the audience that years ago, okay, I'm dating myself, but years ago, it was in the 90s, I had a mentor and I was having a little bout of imposter syndrome. I was given an enormous job. And at the time I thought, geez, you know, to myself, I'm thinking, can I really do this? You know? And so I'm thinking, oh, and I had a mentor, and it turned out I knew a lot more than I thought. I was okay, but that got me through that. And years later, I just this last week received an email from this person. He's sort of stayed in touch over the years, and to hear he stayed in this business, he's doing so well. He's been a mentor to so many people, and like we all say, this is paying it forward. This is the reward is in paying it forward. Your mentees will do the same, hopefully. And I just think that is just, to me, I get a real bang out of that. That's like what it's all about is, so I really love that. So thank you for sharing all of that. So, well, let's go back here. Amanda, which is more desirable? And everyone please jump in after Amanda. Which is more desirable? Equality of outcome or equality of opportunity? For example, should companies be forced to have the same number of males and females in lead positions, equal outcome, or should the role be given to the most qualified, equality of opportunity? Thoughts on this?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think there does have to be a goal for companies of at least 50% women representation, right? I think there should be a goal, but you have to do something to help develop your female leaders and female employees. So I think that the other piece of it is that companies need to provide the right development opportunities so that people can be successful in those leadership positions. Because if we just say, okay, 50% of women and we're going to pick half and half, but then you're setting them up for failure possibly and not setting them up for success. So we want to make sure that there's development, that there's mentorship, that there's programs in place to ensure that they succeed. But there should be a goal, I think, also of making sure that at least half of females are in leadership positions.
Well, that sounds terrific. Christie, Michelle, thoughts on this? This is an interesting question.
Yeah, I think, you know, I'm from a big family. I have 4 sisters, 4 brothers. So I think my perspective is more on, it should be more equality of opportunity. Everybody's given the same shot. That's certainly how, you know, I approach it. I would agree that I like the idea of a goal within a company. But, you know, I look at my own team, even at my current job, small team, but we are 3 women. We just actually brought on our 4th, but we looked at a whole diverse slate of candidates for that role, including men. And the candidate who rose to the table was a diverse woman. So I think it's, you know, looking at the skill set that you're looking for and, you know, bringing on the individual who really is the best fit for it. To your point, Amanda, about having the training and the opportunities, I think that's critical, but I also think employees need to seek those. So in addition to having it there, you have to proactively, you know, make a point to actually, you know, do the training or seek the opportunity, that kind of thing. So
Michelle,
I agree. Yeah, I agree with both what Amanda and Christie said. There's not much I can add, except that diversity needs to be more enforced. However, I've never in all of my life said, well, we have a diversity hole, let's just hire that person. That to me does not work. So then I am for the equality of the opportunity. But then there's that nuance when you do see that your labor force is not reflective of, say, the community or the zeitgeist or that prism that your company is about, then you might have someone who fits the diversity bucket and might come a little under the performance bucket, but maybe they just need that little mentorship to bump them into both buckets. So I don't think it's that black and white. I think we have to look at the diverse pool. Yes, we can't just hire someone because they're a woman or they're of color. Find the best talent, but if you find someone that's 99% the best talent and might need a little bit of training or a little extra boost, HR and development professionals need to look at that person as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
yeah, and just to add one thought there, I think that is so important because of the importance of diversity of thought. And you don't want to have a team or a company, but more so probably realistically a team that's made up of the same type of people. You're not going to come up with as good of ideas. You're not going to create campaigns that are going to have as much impact. So I think that's really important.
Oh,
Excellent. Yes.
Let's embrace our differences. This is become innovative. This is how we're going to create something great. Thank you for that. Well, Christie, you alluded to this earlier, but do you think some industries are doing a better job than others at investing in diversity and inclusion efforts for women?
So the only industry the industry I can speak to the most is technology. And I think I'd have to say it's company by company. I do think there's a lot of effort being put into diversity and inclusion, particularly given, you know, the events of the last year, starting with George Floyd's murder. So it's encouraging to see how much is happening there from investment to actual programs. I will say I'm not here representing Comcast, but one of the things that keeps me very interested in the company is all that we're doing in that area. And I think it keeps employees engaged as well. So I think over the course of my career, I've been lucky to land at companies that really emphasize diversity and inclusion. And part of that might be the industry being in PR. It's a very female-centric field. And up until a certain level. So that's interesting as well. And I think some of that comes down to what we were talking about earlier is, women who leave at that like 5 to 10 year mark to have families and then have a hard time coming back in. So it dwindles, the pool of talent available for those leadership positions. So technology industry is really the only one I can speak to, but I think, it seems from what I'm reading as well, and, just what you're seeing in the world at large, that there's a lot of effort being put there, across the board.
Michelle, would you like to jump in?
Well, I was thinking, we talked earlier about a diverse area of an industry is the hospitality community. And it's one of the reasons why I really took my PR and branding focus to hospitality. I've talked about this with Amanda. And as we get older, I do find it a age forgiving industry, I have to say. I mean, you can be a great chef in your 60s and 70s. I said one of the analogies I gave, which is the great GM, Monsieur Delahaye of the Dorchester. And I don't think he would be annoyed. You could look him up on LinkedIn. I'm sure he's in his mid 70s, the most dapper, elegant man you ever want to meet. But when you've got a hotel room that's clocking in at, over $5,000 a night, you don't want a skater to come in and tell you where to have dinner. So I think there's a level of maturity and elegance and hospitality and kindness that comes within the hotel and restaurant community. I mean, some of the great maitre d's, maître d'hôtes in New York City are older, men and women. So I think it was conscious, not so conscious, and now quite conscious that it's an industry that does accept diversity. I think having language skills is incredibly important. And also now being here in South Florida, I think the pull here was it being so diverse. If you walk out on the street, you will definitely hear Spanish, Creole, and French. Then you'll hear English, but not in a way that is disrespectful of our country. It is a melting pot of great people that add the flair. And this is a huge hospitality community, as we know, in South Florida.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, since we're all at different stages in our careers, for me, I love hearing that I keep saying, my friend gets a laugh out of this. She might be watching that. I keep saying, I'm not done yet. I have so much to give yet and so much to learn. And, so it's refreshing to hear that. Amanda, how about you? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think having worked in a couple of different industries, I do agree with Michelle that hospitality definitely does a great job of setting goals and making sure that we're measuring that to be inclusive. And there's a lot of female leaders in leadership positions. So it's really nice to see a female GM and females in director of finance positions and things like that. So, and I'm also grateful for the current industry that I'm in, that a lot of emphasis on women in leadership and development of women and continuing to drive that message throughout the organization.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you. That was wonderful. And I think Brittany is going to come in and ask us for one last thing. If I may just jump in for Brittany, is this all right? I'm going to just jump in.
Yeah, go for it. We're going to wrap it up with our key takeaways or kind of final one message that each of our panelists would like to leave with the group today. It's been a really great discussion, so I'm looking forward to this.
I am too. Just if you each would please be so kind to leave a message for all the people that are watching today or will be viewing this, just one message about how to create a culture for both themselves and for the larger female community, what would it be? I can't wait for these, actually. I've been really looking forward to this. So. And please just jump in.
I'll go. So I think my message would be take initiative when it comes to opportunities, projects, speaking up, don't be shy. I think that, you know, if you don't take that opportunity or take the chance to say something, you'll never know what could have happened. So, and I think if you're in a company or culture where you get backlash for doing that, then I think it's time to find a new place to be. And there's plenty of different companies, cultures. Not all companies are at the same space. So take a chance and, you know, you'll find the right fit.
Great. Christie?
I'll jump in. Yeah, I'll jump in. I would say have a growth mindset. Don't feel like you have to have every answer. I think that's something that sometimes holds women back, especially coming into a new role, into a senior leadership role. You don't have to have all the answers, just have great questions and just be curious and willing to learn.
Very nice. Michelle?
Yes. Well, all the ladies have said great things, and I can't really add too much more to it, except to find expanders, find people that are doing it well and people you admire, and call them up. If someone is watching you and said, I'm really interested in etiquette, I'm really interested in working at State Department, they should just feel free to reach out to you. And I also think that creating a culture is also around creating a connection with things you love. So some of my greatest clients have been organizations that I respected and wanted to work for them and then reached out to them. So I think we're all saying the same thing, that this lack of timidity, feeling out an environment that you might not think you would, finding expanders, which is different than the mentorship and the sponsorship, but you know, Oprah might be an expander for you. Well, then go and sit and look what her trajectory was. You know, she was a beat reporter for 15 years, you know? So people think you just get from here to here. And also investing in companies, your time, that you would even want to intern in. I'm still a big fan of interning and not being afraid, or finding a bridge job while you research a place that might be fitting. And also, if I could tell my younger self anything, don't be afraid to move on if it does not feel right. Women stay in things, I think, a little bit too long, worrying about money, worrying about disappointing people, but life is very short and life is very tenuous. So if it doesn't feel great and you're not jumping out of bed, my mom used to say, if it's not a hell yeah, it's a hell no.
Love it. Oh, thank you. Sage advice for all the women out there. Please take this advice. This is excellent advice. This is a rare opportunity to hear from such accomplished people. And I concur with everything you've said. Just be your own best advocate. I've always said, you know, stick up for yourself. Nobody else is going to. Get out there and be a mentor, find a mentor. I think the messages today are all powerful and they are so topical. It's very timely with what's happening. So thank you to each of you for being so generous with your expertise and your time. It's been a pleasure to get to know you. Let's stay in touch. And as to Michelle's point, please, anyone reach out to me. People reach out to me on LinkedIn. I love having a virtual coffee. I learn something from every person that I talk to. So thank you for that. And on that note, Brittany, are you going to take it away with our questions?
Yeah, definitely. So we've had a few questions posed throughout the conversation. So I'm just going to pull a few as I'm looking at time. We've got about 10 more minutes with this group. So I just want to make sure I'm conscious of that and getting everyone back to their routine. So one of the things we talked about at the beginning was work-life balance. This question was around Is it actually achievable? And how do I go about setting boundaries? Loaded question there, but I'd say, Amanda, you want to jump in?
Sure. I think for myself, what I struggled with the most was meeting fatigue and trying to find time to actually do my work. So I wasn't sitting at the computer for, all hours of the night. So I think blocking time on a calendar for yourself and also communicating to your team. I think, kind of one of the examples I gave was, we heard a lot of feedback about, parents that needed the afternoons to not have meetings. So be conscious of sharing that, everybody has something at home. And I think blocking your calendar and communicating to your team that these are times that don't work for me, so that things can be scheduled around that.
Yeah, I would just add to that, this is more, I guess, relevant in the current virtual environment, where there is more of a blend between work and home life. But I think in addition to blocking time for, work, is setting time so that, for me, it's, exercising in the morning and then taking a walk in the evening. So you stop at 5, maybe it's for an hour, maybe it's for an hour and a half, walk, eat dinner, whatever it is you want to do. And so you naturally force that into your day. And then I think just, communicating, with your team, with everyone you're working with, so that everybody's on the same page. There are, especially in my field, there's moments when we do have to work in the evenings, on the weekends. But I attempt to shield my team as much as possible from that. And only, so I think it's just taking that kind of mindset to it, and being, mindful of, your calendar.
I think the ladies hit everything there.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect. We'll move on to another question we had. How do we accelerate female leadership? We've been speaking for a while about it, but most companies are still led by males. Heidi, do you want to kick that one off?
Well, I think we've learned a lot today. Hire women and nurture them, offer them some opportunities, work with mentors, and embrace them and try to keep developing people, and then treat them well. So be fair with salaries, be cognitive be empathetic of home lives, and everyone's just trying to make it. And maybe certain situations I need to work remotely or hybridly, and you women will rise, and we can keep them. Then I think that's the problem, as someone said earlier, that I think Christie did, you get to a certain point and you leave. A lot of people maybe have a family and then you come back and it's harder, and so just work with people, be more accommodating, maybe be a little kinder along the way. Anyone else help me? What else?
Well, I also think that sometimes you can't fit the odd nail in the peg that doesn't fit properly. I would look more at companies that are already doing it. Unfortunately, I've been in very male-dominated companies where even to this day, I have not seen that shift. So I would tell people to invest women in companies that are already leaders in it. Because if those companies drain the female pool of talent, those other companies that are not as progressive towards women will change their tune. I think, again, it goes back to life is too short. We shouldn't have to struggle. We shouldn't have to beat down the doors so aggressively. But if you have a list of 7 companies that you're interested in after doing that research, and 5 of them are super committed to advancing women, look at those.
Exactly. I've left companies over the years, and I'm older, and when it's not a good fit and you can see the writing on the wall, find a better fit. That's
exactly.
Yeah, and I would just add, I would say change is happening at those companies, but it's a long-term effort and it's ongoing, and it won't happen overnight. So
exactly.
Wonderful. So we have time for one more question, and I'm going to finish up with that question. We've got, research is showing that, profits and share performance can be really a lot higher when you have women at the top, and senior level women have a really meaningful impact on a company's culture. How do you in today's world, how do you be dominant without catching flack as a woman? That was kind of the long and short of this question. So how are you able to advocate for yourself without, tying to that stigma that sometimes happens with women about, being too dominant in a role? I think that's a lot. It's a loaded question, but I thought it would be a good one to add at the end.
Well, I think we have to decide what it means to be dominant.
Mm-hmm.
You can be dominant without being unladylike. I don't know why one wouldn't advocate for their own career advancement. It is a domination role. And I think there's the art of negotiation. There's also the art of domination. I think the word dominate is a bit loaded, but from my experience, and as Heidi said, no one is going to advocate for you better than yourself. So maybe if we change the mindset of strategic career planning versus being dominant, you can put those long-term roadmaps for yourself. If any of my people are listening, they know I stayed at an agency 1 year too long because it was quite clear that I was never going to make partner. It just was not in the cards. And unfortunately, it was probably because I was a woman, because there were no other female partners. But then it was up to me. Do I push? Which I did. The results weren't what I wanted. And then I had to decide to move. So fighting for yourself does not have to be, everyone needs to go rewatch, what is it, Sigourney Weaver with Working Girls?
Yes.
The 80s ball busting CEO chick. That's a bad stereotype that women are still living down, unfortunately. And when you think about dominating and advocating for your own career success, that Sigourney Weaver photo comes up in your mind. I think that this is your life and it's your career. And if you want to get to the next level, you get those mentors, you get those advocates within your own company. And if you're not seeing the wrong move in 3 to 6 months and you've got trackable successes, you need to look elsewhere.
I so agree, Michelle, with everything you said. It's a long road, as Christie pointed out. It's not
And
always,
I'm older too, so.
and it is not always easy. It's not going to be linear. And keep your grace. That's some of the things, some of the toughest spots I've been in when I look back. I was proud that I kept my grace. I had that, and then, okay, not a good fit for me, time to move on. And I think that's, yeah, thank you. Great, well said, well said.
I'll just add to that. I think it's also, be confident. And part of that is being prepared. So be prepared for every meeting that you go into and anticipate who your detractors will be and have answers for that in, whatever meeting you're going into, whatever conversation you're going into. So I think that's a big part of the confidence piece.
Definitely.
Yep.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, we've reached our time for today. I want to thank again our panelists for taking the time out of their busy schedules to share their, wonderful experience and expertise on this topic. Thank you again, Heidi, for hosting today's fireside chat. Please feel free to follow up, head over to HeidiDulebohn.com. We're going to be hosting this on Heidi's YouTube channel, sharing it across social media. We'd love to continue the conversation. And as Michelle, Amanda, and Christie stated, make sure that we're continuing this conversation. No time is better than the present to make sure that we're investing in women and moving the culture piece forward. So I think that we appreciate your time today, ladies, and we will hopefully see you all soon in some capacity. And please join us again for our next fireside chat that we'll be announcing sometime soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.